If you've ever wondered why most traders fail, the answer isn't the market, it's in their mind. And there's one emotion, more than any other, that silently destroys their account. In this video, you're not just going to learn what that emotion is, you're going to understand how it works and how you can remove its grip on your trading. Stick around till the end, because what I'm about to share could be the difference between staying in the game and losing it all. In trading, charts, strategies, and indicators often get the spotlight. But underneath all of that is a silent driver of every decision you make, your emotions. And out of all the emotions that can influence a trader, there's one that consistently causes more losses than any other: fear. Fear is not always loud. It doesn't always scream at you. Sometimes it whispers, a subtle doubt right before you place a trade, a hesitation that makes you miss an opportunity, or a voice that tells you to exit too soon, because something bad might happen. Over time, those whispers become patterns, and those patterns drain your account more effectively than any losing strategy. But what exactly is fear in the context of trading? It's the emotional response to perceived risk. Not actual risk, but the perception of it. The market might be neutral or even favorable, but your brain interprets a potential move as a threat. This is because the human brain is hardwired to avoid loss at all costs. In evolutionary terms, avoiding danger was more important than gaining reward. If you avoided a risky situation, you lived to see another day. In trading, however, the survival instinct often works against you. Fear shows up in different ways for different traders. Sometimes it's the fear of losing money, especially after a recent loss. This is when a trader becomes overly cautious, entering positions too late, or avoiding them altogether. Other times, it's the fear of missing out, FOMO, which makes a trader enter at poor prices just because the market seems to be moving without them. And perhaps the most dangerous of all is the fear of being wrong, because that can lead to holding losing positions for too long, refusing to close them out in the hope that the market will prove you right. One of the most deceptive things about fear is that it often disguises itself as rational thinking. You might convince yourself that you're closing a trade early because it's the smart thing to do, when in reality, you're reacting emotionally to the slightest movement against your position. This is why fear is so dangerous. It doesn't announce itself as fear. It hides behind logic, behind market analysis, and behind the comforting thought that you're just being careful. But here's the thing. The market rewards calculated risk, not fear-based decision-making. If your actions are driven by fear, you're not following your trading plan anymore. You're following your survival instinct. And survival instinct in the markets often means staying small, staying reactive, and staying unprofitable. You can see this clearly in how fear impacts execution. Imagine you've identified a high-probability setup. You've done your analysis. You've set your entry, stop loss, and target. But as the market approaches your entry, you start second-guessing. What if it goes the other way? What if my stop gets hit immediately? What if the news changes everything? Suddenly you hesitate. The price moves in your predicted direction without you, and you're left watching from the sidelines. In that moment, fear didn't just cost you money, it cost you the opportunity to build your confidence as a trader. Another scenario. You're in a winning trade, and it's halfway to your target. The chart is moving exactly as you expected. But then, a small retracement happens. Your heart rate spikes. Your mind jumps to thoughts of losing the unrealized gains. Fear tells you to take the money before it disappears. You exit early, locking in a small win, only to watch the price move exactly to your target afterward. You didn't follow your plan, you followed fear. The reason this happens so consistently is that fear compresses your time horizon. When fear kicks in, your focus shifts from the bigger picture to the immediate moment. You're no longer thinking about the long-term performance of your system. You're thinking about avoiding pain right now. And that short-term mindset is a killer in trading. It's important to remember that fear is not inherently bad. In fact, in the right context, fear keeps you alive. But in trading, you're not fighting a wild animal. You're dealing with probabilities and calculated risks. The problem is that your brain reacts to a red candle on a chart the same way it would to a real-life threat. The adrenaline, the rapid heartbeat, the narrowed focus, all of it is your fight-or-flight system activating. And while that's useful in a dangerous situation, in trading it leads to impulsive, and irrational choices. Some traders try to eliminate fear completely, but that's not realistic. The better goal is to recognize it early and prevent it from dictating your decisions. And recognition starts with awareness. The moment you feel that tightening in your chest, the moment you notice yourself hovering over the close button, without a clear reason, that's your cue. Ask yourself, am I following my plan or am I following my fear? In the end, fear is just information. It's your brain's way of warning you about potential danger. But if you can train yourself to separate the signal from the noise, fear can actually become an ally, a reminder to check your analysis, to confirm your setup, and to stay disciplined. What makes it deadly for most traders is not its existence, but the lack of awareness around it. If you can identify when fear is speaking, you can decide whether to listen or to follow your strategy instead. And that decision, repeated over time, is what separates the 90% who lose from the 10% who win. Fear in trading doesn't just make you feel uncomfortable. It actively reshapes the way you think, process information, and act in the market. It's not simply an emotional wave that passes by. It's a filter that changes every decision you make. When fear takes over, logic takes a backseat, and survival instinct starts driving the wheel. The first and most obvious impact fear has is hesitation. You might have a solid trading plan, a strategy you've tested, and even a perfect setup forming on the chart. But as the moment to enter approaches, doubt starts to creep in. Questions like, what if I'm wrong? Or what if the market suddenly reverses? Start filling your mind. Instead of executing on time, you delay, waiting for some extra confirmation that never truly comes. By the time you finally feel safe to enter, the ideal price is gone, and you've either missed a trade or jumped in too late, reducing your potential profit and increasing your risk. Fear can also push you to act too quickly. This is especially visible in what traders call panic selling. Imagine holding a position that's temporarily in drawdown, but still within your planned stop loss. A sudden price drop triggers an adrenaline rush, and you instantly feel the urge to get out before things get worse. Without fully assessing the market context, you close the trade prematurely, locking in a loss that could have turned into a profit if you had stuck to your plan. That quick exit isn't the result of strategic thinking. It's a reaction to the discomfort of uncertainty. Then there's the opposite scenario, fear of being wrong, which can trap you in a losing trade much longer than you should be. No one likes admitting they made a bad call, but fear magnifies this reluctance. Closing the trade means accepting a loss, and fear makes that loss feel like a personal failure rather than just a part of the statistical reality of trading. This emotional resistance causes you to ignore your stop loss or move it farther away, hoping the market will turn back in your favor. More often than not, this results in small losses snowballing into account-damaging ones. Fear doesn't just affect your entries and exits, it changes your overall trading style. Traders who have experienced a big loss often become overly conservative, avoiding perfectly valid opportunities simply because they feel unsafe. This cautiousness might protect you from further losses in the short term, but also prevents you from making gains, effectively stalling your progress. On the flip side, fear of missing out can make you overly aggressive, jumping into trades without proper analysis just because you're worried the move will happen without you. Both extremes are destructive, and both come from the same root, decisions driven by emotion rather than by a plan. Another subtle but dangerous way fear affects decisions is by distorting your perception of market signals. Under the influence of fear, you're more likely to interpret neutral or even favorable data as negative. A small pullback in an uptrend suddenly looks like the start of a full reversal. A momentary spike in volatility feels like chaos. This negative bias can lead you to exit winning trades early, avoid entering setups that meet all your criteria, or switch strategies prematurely because you believe your current one isn't working. In reality, it's not the strategy failing. It's your fear filtering the information. Fear also shortens your time horizon. Instead of thinking about the bigger picture or the performance of your system over hundreds of trades, you get fixated on the outcome of the next one or two trades. Every tick against you feels like a crisis. This short-term focus can lead to overtrading, constantly try to make back small losses or abandoning trades too early to secure tiny wins. Over time, this erodes your edge because you're not allowing your strategy to play out as intended. Perhaps the most insidious impact of fear is how it can create a feedback loop. You hesitate, miss a trade, feel regret, and then fear increases for the next opportunity. Or you exit too early, watch the market hit your target after you're out, and the frustration feeds more fear the next time you're in a similar situation. This loop can spiral into a loss of confidence, making it harder and harder to execute with clarity. What's important to understand is that fear-driven decisions aren't random. They follow predictable patterns, and once you start noticing these patterns in your own behavior, you can take steps to interrupt them. You might realize that you tend to close trades too soon after they hit a certain unrealized profit, or that you avoid entering trades right after a loss. These are fear responses, not strategic adjustments. The best traders aren't fearless. They simply don't let fear run the show. They have systems in place to ensure that their decisions align with their plan, not their emotions. They recognize when fear is influencing their thinking and consciously pause before acting. This pause is critical because it creates space for rational analysis to re-enter the process. Without that space, you're at the mercy of instinct, and instinct in trading is often a recipe for inconsistency. When you break it down, every poor decision caused by fear has one thing in common. It moves you away from your plan. Whether it's getting in too late, getting out too early, holding too long, or avoiding trades altogether, fear replaces strategy with reaction. And in a game where consistency is key, reactionary trading will almost always lead to failure. Recognizing the ways fear creeps into your decisions is the first step toward controlling it, and controlling it is one of the defining skills of a consistently profitable trader. Fear in trading is not just an emotional reaction. It is deeply rooted in the way the human brain is wired to survive. To understand why it has such a strong influence on traders, you have to look at the psychology behind it. The brain is built to prioritize safety over opportunity. Thousands of years ago, avoiding danger meant staying alive, and that survival programming is still present today. The problem is, the brain doesn't differentiate between a physical threat and a financial one. A sudden market drop can trigger the same fight or flight response as a wild animal appearing in front of you. Your heart rate increases, adrenaline floods your system, and your body prepares for action, not for calm, logical analysis. This response comes from the amygdala, a part of the brain responsible for processing emotions and detecting threats. When the amygdala senses danger, it overrides the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for rational thinking and decision-making. In trading, this means that when fear kicks in, your ability to think logically is reduced and instinct takes over. Instinct is great when you need to jump out of the way of a speeding car, but in trading, it often causes you to make decisions that sabotage your long-term goals. A key psychological principle linked to fear in trading is loss aversion. Studies in behavioral finance, especially those by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, have shown that people experience the pain of a loss about twice as strongly as they experience the pleasure of a gain. This means that losing $100 feels far worse than gaining $100 feels good. In practical terms, loss aversion causes traders to avoid losses at any cost, even if it means making irrational decisions like holding on to losing trades in the hope they'll turn around, or closing winning trades too early to protect profits. Fear is also connected to uncertainty, which the human brain dislikes intensely. The market is a constantly changing environment with no guaranteed outcomes. Every trade you take has an element of risk, and that unpredictability is uncomfortable for most people. This discomfort activates the brain's threat detection systems, leading to overthinking, second-guessing, and avoidance. For new traders, the uncertainty can feel overwhelming, making them prone to paralysis. They spend hours analyzing but fail to execute when the time comes. Another psychological factor at play is the negativity bias. This is the brain's tendency to focus more on negative events than positive ones. In trading, it means that one bad trade can overshadow a series of good ones. If you've ever found yourself dwelling on a single loss while ignoring your overall profitable track record, you've experienced negativity bias. This bias fuels fear by making losses feel more significant than they are in the bigger picture. Memory also plays a role. Emotional experiences, especially negative ones, are stored more vividly in our memory. If you've suffered a major trading loss in the past, your brain remembers it in detail and uses it as a reference point for future situations. This can lead to anticipatory fear, the expectation that the same bad outcome will happen again. As a result, you may become overly cautious or avoid taking trades that actually meet your criteria, simply because they remind you of a past loss. The social and ego-driven aspects of psychology can amplify fear too. Many traders tie their self-worth to their performance. Losing a trade doesn't just feel like losing money. It feels like a personal failure. This ego attachment can make fear of being wrong much stronger. The idea of admitting a mistake, even just to yourself, becomes so uncomfortable that you might hold on to a losing position longer than you should, hoping it will turn around so you can avoid the shame of being wrong. Fear in trading is also reinforced through operant conditioning, the same psychological principle used in habit formation. If taking a trade and losing causes pain, your brain learns to associate trading with discomfort. Over time, this can condition you to avoid trading situations altogether or to exit trades prematurely to avoid the potential pain. This is why some traders find it hard to get back into the market after a losing streak. Their brain has been trained to see trading as a threat rather than an opportunity. Another layer to the psychology of fear is overestimation of risk. Humans tend to exaggerate the probability of negative outcomes, especially when they have recently experienced something bad. In trading, this means you might overestimate the chances of your stop loss being hit or a setup failing, even if the actual probability is low. This mental distortion can cause you to abandon perfectly good trades or alter your plan mid-trade. Finally, it's important to recognize that fear is self-reinforcing. When fear leads you to make a poor decision, such as closing a trade too early, the missed profit creates regret. That regret becomes another emotional memory, which strengthens your fear in similar situations. Over time, this feedback loop can erode confidence, making it harder to execute your plan without hesitation. Understanding the psychology behind fear is the first step to managing it. When you realize that your fear is not a reflection of the actual danger in the market, but a product of evolutionary wiring, cognitive biases, and past experiences, you can start to separate the emotion from the reality. Fear will always be present to some degree. It's a part of being human, but it doesn't have to control your actions. The traders who succeed are not those who never feel fear, but those who recognize it for what it is and choose to act according to their plan, not their instinct. When traders feel fear, greed, or frustration, they usually try to fight those emotions directly. They think, I just need to control my feelings. But here's the truth. Emotions don't disappear by force. They transform when you change the beliefs and stories that generate them. And this is exactly where awareness and reframing come in, the ultimate antidote to destructive emotions. Awareness is your mental radar. It's the skill of noticing in real time the emotional wave before it crashes. Without awareness, fear doesn't announce itself politely. It hijacks your thinking. It makes you see patterns that aren't there, exit trades too early, or chase entries that don't exist. It whispers urgent lies. You're about to lose everything. By the time you notice, you've already pulled the trigger. This is why the very first step in killing destructive emotion is simply noticing it. Noticing is not the same as judging. It's not saying, oh no, I'm afraid, this is bad. It's saying, I feel fear in my chest. My hands are tense. My mind is rushing ahead. You're not the emotion. You're the observer. This separation gives you the microsecond you need to choose your next move consciously instead of reacting impulsively. But awareness alone isn't enough. You can notice your fear and still act out of it. This is where reframing becomes your weapon. Reframing is a mental process of changing the meaning of what's happening so that the emotion loses its power. Here's an example. Let's say you're in a trade that's slightly against you. Fear tells you this is the beginning of a big loss. A weak trader believes that voice. A strong trader reframes it. The market is just fluctuating as it always does. This is within my stop-loss range. Nothing unusual is happening. Same market movement, but now it's filtered through a calmer perspective. The fear doesn't vanish instantly, but it loses its claws. Another example. Many traders fear missing out on a big move. FOMO. The reframe? Opportunities in the market are infinite. Missing this one is irrelevant to my long-term edge. This isn't positive thinking fluff. It's about grounding your perception in reality instead of in emotional distortion. You might be thinking, okay, but how do I get good at this? Like any skill, reframing requires practice. One of the best drills is the pause and reframe method. Every time you feel a strong emotion in trading, fear, greed, anger, pause for 5 seconds. Identify the thought behind it. Then, deliberately choose an alternative interpretation that's more objective, more aligned with your trading plan. The more you do this, the faster your brain rewires. Eventually, reframing becomes automatic, and emotions lose their power before they can take over. There's another layer to killing destructive emotion: expectation management. Most traders don't realize that a huge percentage of their emotional spikes come from unrealistic expectations. They expect every trade to work, every day to be green, and every setup to pay quickly. When reality doesn't match, emotions flare. If you go into the market already knowing that losses are a part of the game, that streaks happen, and that your edge plays out over hundreds of trades, not one, you cut the emotional voltage in half. Now, when you face a loss, it's not a shocking betrayal. It's just one data point in your statistical plan. Also, you need to understand the role of identity in trading emotions. If you see every losing trade as a statement about you, I'm bad at trading, I can't do this, the emotion becomes personal and unbearable. But if you see each trade as simply a feedback loop, this worked, this didn't, here's what to adjust, emotions stay in check. This shift from identity to process is one of the most powerful emotional immunizers a trader can develop. Here's the final piece: self-compassion. This might sound soft, but it's actually a hardcore trading tool. Beating yourself up after emotional mistakes doesn't build discipline. It builds shame, which makes emotional reactions worse. Self-compassion means acknowledging mistakes, learning from them, and moving on without dragging emotional baggage into the next trade. The lighter your mental load, the sharper your decision-making. So, how do you actually kill the emotion that makes 90% of traders lose? You don't attack it head-on. You dissolve it through awareness, reframe it through new meaning, weaken it with realistic expectations, and protect yourself with process-based thinking. Over time, the destructive emotion isn't gone, but it's like a declawed predator. It's there, but it can't hurt you anymore. The market will never stop triggering you. It will always throw surprises, reversals, and fake-outs. But if you train yourself to spot your emotional patterns early, reinterpret them in a way that serves you, and stick to your process regardless of how you feel, you turn what used to be your biggest weakness into your greatest edge. And here's the best part. Once you master the skill in trading, you'll notice it bleeding into other areas of life. Business decisions, relationships, negotiations all benefit from the same ability to stay calm, see clearly, and act from reason rather than impulse. Remember, most traders try to change a market to fit their emotions. The winners change their emotions to fit the market. That's how you survive. That's how you win. So, if you look closely, the single emotion that destroys 90% of traders is not just a feeling. It's a silent predator. It creeps in unnoticed, distorts perception, pushes you into reckless moves, and leaves you wondering how you lost control. But here's the truth. You are not powerless against it. By understanding how this emotion works, by building the discipline to step back instead of reacting, by developing mental clarity before you click buy or sell, you can transform your trading from a gamble into a deliberate craft. Markets will never stop testing you. Prices will spike, crash, and tempt you into emotional decisions. But the trader who learns to master their inner state will always have the upper hand over those who don't. This is why trading success is not about predicting the next candle. It's about predicting your own behavior and controlling it before it controls you. If you kill this one emotion at its roots, you are not just improving your trading results. You are rewriting your identity as a trader. You stop being at the mercy of the market and start becoming the calm force that moves with purpose. Remember, in trading, the greatest victory is not winning a trade. It's winning over yourself. And once you do that, profits stop being the goal. They become the inevitable side effect of mastery.